Hi all and welcome back. Right, we're going to get into some sub-intel. I started doing pieces last week of numbers of so-called famous people dying. And there's two more this week. Rutger Hauer, 75, died suddenly. And Gabe Cahuth, 46, died suddenly. And nothing was in the reports of how or why. Now, remember the intel about large mergers, and this is going to be the top orders new theme. Well, the Justice Department on Friday said it is approving T-Mobile's takeover. We'll have more on T-Mobile later. Oh no, it's in this piece. Oh well. Of T-Mobile taking over Sprint and clearing a major hurdle to a deal that would merge the nation's third and fourth largest wireless carriers. Harvesting time for businesses is what's really happening. And the companies have agreed to divest Sprint's prepaid businesses, including Boost Mobile, to Dish Network Corp, in order to move ahead with the merger, which was announced last year and previously valued at $25 billion. But the deal still faces a significant challenge because a group of US state attorneys have filed a lawsuit in New York to block the merger, arguing that the proposed deal would cost consumers more than $4.5 billion annually. There is another piece about this later, but as a precursor, you do realise that neither of these are American-owned companies. Neither of them. T-Mobile is owned 63% by Deutsche Telekom AG, German, and Sprint is 84% owned by a Tokyo company called SoftBank. Next piece is indicative, and it's no surprise that he and Ms. Von Reitz came out swinging again this week. They weren't the only ones. The Jesper Clowns were another lot of Kingdom of Manor. But Neil Keenan's latest, and he talks about Japan and South Korea again. And it's all very reminiscent of his post in 2013, that story to me. In fact, it is. Loop News. Same subject, same two countries, all about stealing gold out of South Korea. No, that's not happened, and didn't. And unfortunately, not all of us have short memories. But some of the quotes is useful for people to understand. We do have a lot of new members. And Neil, or whoever is representing Neil, said, quote, while spelling their own fear, defeat and moving as quickly as possible to alleviate their world financial losses, what better place to start their next outlandish thievery than South Korea with its hundreds of global accounts in bunkers, with the majority being owned by the Golden Dragon family. For those that don't know, those bunkers are empty. And the real Neil Keenan would have known that. And no, they don't or didn't belong to dragons, golden or other colours either. And it was stolen out of several countries and given to the Pindar Marcos and his band of minions, Sukarno, Sino, and also the Kennedys, who I believe Neil Keenan is actually related to. Go and check a picture of Teddy Kennedy. Given he travelled on their jet as a child. Keenan's words to me, not mine. And Keenan, the name Keenan is a derivative of Kennedy. That's why when they said they've been waiting for him for decades. And if people think the Kennedys are good, wrong again. All that fun and games which looked great to us, he was going after the CIA and going after the Federal Reserve. He was going after the Bush group because the two families hated each other. It's almost like the faction wars now, where one faction tells all juicy tidbits on this faction, that faction and that faction, but leaves out their own. A bit like the Able Danger Group and some others. That's how it works. And the only reason Indonesia is a focus of attention at all is because Marcos was the Pindar from there for several decades. In our time, he was the most prominent Pindar. And even after his fake public announced death, he carried on Pindar for another 15 years, I think, ballpark. Because he never died publicly. And Marcos harvested everything and was like the central bank for Marduk, being the Pindar. And then Neil's blog says, today we know them as global collateral accounts. The West did not use anything other than the stolen assets or loot from the war itself. That comment alone says much. The West used the stolen assets. This is globalist speak for a few reasons. One, the loot in those bunkers Neil refuses to identify the real countries it was stolen from, of which 88% of it was from Rusland. Not China or the East. Russia. And two, it's a classic divide and conquer program of blame the West and shift everything to the East. Three, the globalists were transferring all power, money and wealth from the West to the East under the Federal Reserve Agreement of around 1910, with the new Fed building was going in Macau, Singapore. That's not happening. And four, fails to mention that a lot of that gold was stolen by the very people he works for. 5. Let us not forget the comment Neil Keenan said to me in a call in Christmas 2014. Quote, Thomas, Americans are fat lazy bastards who need to get back to work and not live middle-class lifestyles off the back of the wealth of the East. All of it belongs to the East. Unquote. No, it doesn't. It never has done. And the RNA proves it. Now, it's 5 years ago now that Keenan allegedly went into the vaults and allegedly pulled out some small boxes. Some say it was gold, some say it was copper in the boxes. But one has to ask how and why the M1, as he calls him, which is the monetary master, and his latest position of leader of the Muslims on behalf of Allah, the Amanah, as to why he hasn't been in one bunker since. And if he has, where are the collateral accounts? The point being is that the original Neil Keenan from several sources was deleted in some way around September of 2016. I can't find a single valid source to state he's still alive. And that came shortly after a visit by Robert David Steele. Is Mr. Steele the handler? Same company. And the new one, the new Keenan, to me looks suspiciously like Michael Young and dragon partner of Anna von Reitz. He was the person that asked for a third of, with her support, a third of America's in-ground resources. I'm going to get to von Reitz in a minute. Now, it's irrelevant whether he is the original Neil Keenan or not. What is relevant is why, as the M1 holder of all the collateral accounts, has been and still is begging for money from the public, selling massively overpriced healing machines. Why is the Amanah, which is a disciple of Allah, not able to deliver anything but loop stories on his blog and show pictures of something that resembles to me like a giant golden dildo? And a bag covering up the lower portion of it. What's the bag hiding? Now, I've said all along, if Neil delivers the collateral accounts to the people, I'll be as happy as anyone on this planet. But this drivel he or his scriptwriters put out is helping no one. Like Jesper and their teams and generals, all of them are being led a merry dance of which they should have long past worked out by now. They're playing games with them. RVs, collateral accounts, just goes on and on. I got this from one of the members, and it's important because it's not the only story I've heard about post offices this week. I didn't have time to pull up the other one to tie it together, but this is indicative of the larger picture. Don't ignore it. In South Africa, anyone who is getting a pension or child grant now has to draw their money at the post office. If it goes into a bank account, the card is swallowed and they have to reapply, and when it's paid out at the post office, money is missing in the grant or pension amount. Why? It's the running out. Not just that country. And there's been hundreds of people lining up at post offices to get their money, which is paid short. And the question was, do you think, and is it possible, or Rothschilds are now looting the pension and children's grant money in different countries? They've looted everything. There's nothing left. The problem with South Africa is you need to go and ask. Of course, it's linked with the Bank of England as well. Is the Reserve Bank of South Africa and the Bank of England, if you want it to stop and there's money for the people, is tell them to stop making donations to the Chinese. That's where all the money's going, because they've got none left over there. Next item, short, to the point. People may well witness changes in the moon. Next piece, Anna von Reitz raised her head again. No coincidence, given the work done recently, so thank you for the confirm. And particularly the latest Envious of Kim piece that she comes up with now and again when certain hammers fall behind the scenes. Out, they send the Langley 2 puppet, and she didn't disappoint again, if it is her. And apparently now her and her agency partners have decided to blame Kim for blocking the RV. The RV that was never existed to begin with. And Kim's also blocking the Vatican trust funds, causing global warming, and also Kim caused the last ice age as well, it seems, according to Anna von Reitz. The same woman who asks questions never answers any real questions posed to her. None. She just rattles off verbiage that contradicts herself and makes no sense whatsoever, as you will see. So in the email she sent, quote, I never asked her, Kim, to send a penny to the Vatican. Why in the hell would I, when all the money she says she controls is coming from the Vatican and its network banks? Wrong. All the money does not come from the Vatican banks or their network. She then states this: I want an account set up. This is what she asked Kim. In the Vatican Bank for the office of the fiduciary, so that we, the United States of America, can conduct necessary business related to our assets, which are mainly offshore in banks controlled by the Vatican. And that requires us to open up an account at the Vatican Bank and open up the dialogue about these legacy accounts. Contradictory in any way? I never asked her to send a penny to the Vatican, and then she tells you she wanted an account set up in the Vatican Bank. Her words, not mine. So according to her, now she's the bad guy for demanding that accounts should be audited independently by owners, and asking Kim to set up an account for my office of the fiduciary at the Vatican Bank, so that we can pay our auditors and support them while in Rome. For one, she never states who these owners are, a repeated question that she fails to answer. All too convenient. Why doesn't she go and ask the bloodline families she represents for the alleged funding to Rome? Why is it coming out of the trust? And number two, we are not the United States. We are America. And with her legal background, she should know that. She then went on to say, that's not giving the Vatican a ton of money. That's access of money already in the Vatican Bank that the American people are owed to do a duty required by any fiduciary. Really. And all very reminiscent of her sidekick, Neil Keenan. So it's the same programme, who despite being the M1 monetary controller, needed $20,000 from his members to gain access to the bunkers. So now Anna was not asking for $20,000. Anna was asking Kim for $10 billion. Anyone see the similarity? So she said, so having stated that she never asked Kim to send money to the Vatican, then requests $10 billion to go into the Vatican Bank. Why not any other bank? Why the Vatican? Because Anna was the personal legal secretary to the popes. That's why. Particularly the Nazi Ratzinger. And she said, I asked her to put $10 billion in an interest-bearing account so that the interest would support asset recovery teams in Rome, the Philippines, no surprise there, and other locations where we need to send auditors, lawyers, and bank examiners. Fine. Question 1. Why would it take $10 billion to audit anything? Question 2. Who appointed the auditors that she was going to send, lawyers and bank examiners? Auditors like Deloitte, Cabal, lawyers who lie all day, every day, so why should we trust them? And bank examiners? Oh my, that's a bit like the police investigating the police, is it not? So where is the public oversight for spending $10 billion on that? It defies belief. She still won't mention about the deal with Michael Young, aka potential new Neil Keenan, of the 1/3 of America's in-ground resources going to the Chinese. But questions back to the multi-elite bloodline family named one, with family who thinks she's the Queen of England. We know you work for the families. We're not stupid. It's all in your name. The question remains, what have they ever done for humanity? What did they do with the trust funds when they had access? Tell you what they did. They all lined their own pockets with our money. And now they don't have access. They think we are stupid enough to give them the same Harvest and family people access back in. Really? I think you spent too much time with Emily in the Yahweh channel, if you ask me, Anna. So now Kim is apparently spreading false information about Anna. Wrong again, Anna. I'm putting out the information, not Kim, and it's not false. She goes on, after what has gone on here, we're just supposed to take whatever we are given and not conduct our own audit. Why not? Why can't you conduct your own audit? Kim has funded her own efforts to eliminate the harvesting clowns and work on the trust. What makes you so different? And how the hell does it cost 10 billion to audit anything? Kim has stood in the way of us doing that, just as she stood in the way of accessing the other two trusts, which don't belong to them, that could be providing relief to this country's poorest people right now today. Oh, spare me that drivel. And you expect the people to believe that? Who did you blame for non-actions before Kim became a more public figure in 2016, Anna? Who was stopping you and all the bloodline families in the preceding years, going back to 2007, when your master cut off all the bloodline families? What was stopping you then? The gist of all this is the families of which she is part of did not give a single thought to humanity whilst they were being given funds to build their mini empires around the world. Habsburgs, which is the predominant family of von Reitz. They stole all kinds, going back to the 1200s. And what happened is Marduk cut them all off, and they all cried wolf and wanted their funds and trusts back. Except those funds and trusts never belonged to them to begin with. This is what these people don't get. All that in the trust is the people's money, not bloodline families. And what they're asking is almost like the equivalent of Dick Turpin robbing a stagecoach, carrying on through the forest, getting beaten up, his loot stolen, and then complaining to the authorities he's been robbed. It's beyond stupidity. $10 billion to go through some books. Let's put that into perspective, shall we? $10 billion is higher than the GDP of 72 countries around the world. Ponder on that for a second. Then add in all the banks around the world, and she chose the Vatican. Oh my. The same Vatican bank that was partially closed down 4 to 5 years ago for corruption. All she was doing is facilitating money laundering, because that would have gone right out the back door and right over to the Chinese counterparts. So, give me a break with your desperate drivel, Anna. It's got more holes in it than a Swiss cheese. The world's just not as stupid as you all thought anymore, and is cottoning on to your elitist family games. And as for your abilities as a legal expert, was it not you that lost in court both cases on your non-paying of taxes and also your home? So don't be spouting about your legal standing. Now, personally, I have sympathy on both of those cases with you, but don't be spouting legalese, because it doesn't work too well, despite being a Vatican insider. They're your words. You're the one that says you were the personal secretary to the Pope, not mine. And when she and all the other clowns realise your enemy is not Kim. The enemy is you and who you work for. Then we might see a better version of Anna, stacked with knowledge like she has, and ideas, I might add, to go forward for the people, not houses or bloodline families. They've all failed. It's all gone. You got duped. You duped the people and M duped you. Get over it. And what Kim wants to do is to share it right round the world, because all that life force energy, which is what the piece of papers represents, came from everyone on this planet. Very rarely see these bloodline families digging in mines or any of that shit. No, you'll sit there, landowners and slaves.